Here's a gripping introduction for your YouTube video story. The atmosphere inside FBI headquarters was tense. The kind of tension that creeps into a room when something completely unexpected happens. Something that leaves even the most experienced officials speechless. News had just broken. A new deputy FBI director had been appointed, and the choice was baffling. It wasn't a seasoned agent, a career law enforcement official, or even someone from the intelligence community. No, it was a right-wing podcaster. A man better known for fiery political rants than investigative work. And now he was second in command of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country. Inside the Bureau, reactions ranged from disbelief to outright panic. Is this a joke? One senior agent reportedly asked when the announcement came through. Another simply shook his head, staring at his phone, reading the news headline over and over as if hoping the words would change. But they didn't. It was real. The appointment had come directly from former President Donald Trump, a move that stunned Washington and sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. For years, this podcaster, who built his audience railing against the so-called deep state and pushing controversial conspiracy theories, had been a vocal critic of the very agency he was now set to help lead. His shows were filled with accusations, claims that the FBI had been weaponized against conservatives, that it was time to clean house. And now, thanks to Trump, he had been given the authority to do just that. The question on everyone's mind was clear. What happens next? Would he purge senior officials who had been investigating Trump and his allies? Would he dismantle long-standing FBI procedures, pushing a more partisan agenda? Or, perhaps most terrifying for some inside the agency, would he go after his old enemies, those who had publicly dismissed his claims as reckless conspiracy? As the news spread, agents huddled in quiet conversations, trading theories and worries. Some feared mass resignations. Others wondered if Congress would step in. But one thing was certain, this was uncharted territory. The FBI had never seen anything like it before. And then, just as people were beginning to process the reality of what was happening, a chilling detail emerged. Someone inside the Bureau had leaked an internal memo. A warning. A senior FBI official had written, "If this appointment stands, the integrity of this agency will be at risk." Was this the beginning of a political takeover? A power shift that could change the FBI forever? Or was there something even deeper at play? Something no one saw coming? Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. Here's the continuation of your story. In the hours that followed the shocking announcement, FBI offices across the country were buzzing with hushed conversations. Agents sent messages to one another, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Some couldn't believe it was real. Others saw it as confirmation of their worst fears. Politics had officially infiltrated the highest levels of the Bureau. Inside the Hoover Building, a meeting was called. Senior officials gathered behind closed doors, their faces grim. No cameras, no recordings. Just a handful of the most experienced law enforcement professionals in the country, trying to figure out what this meant for the future of the FBI. Some wanted to push back, to issue a public statement, to resign in protest. But others cautioned against it. "We don't know what his next move is," one official reportedly warned. "If we react too fast, we might play right into his hands." Meanwhile, outside the FBI, Washington was in chaos. News networks scrambled to get statements from politicians, legal experts, and former intelligence officials. Some defended the appointment, arguing that the Bureau needed an outsider, someone who would shake up the system. But others saw it as a dangerous step toward dismantling the agency's independence. One former FBI director appeared on live television, his voice measured but serious. The FBI was built to be above politics, he said. If we lose that, we lose everything. And then there was the man at the center of it all, the right-wing podcaster himself. While agents whispered and lawmakers debated, he was celebrating. Just hours after the appointment was announced, he went live on his show, his energy electric. They never saw this coming, he laughed, staring into the camera. For years, they've called me crazy, a conspiracy theorist. But guess what? Now I'm inside the machine. And let me tell you something, it's worse than I thought. His audience erupted in support. The live chat flooded with comments, some cheering him on, others demanding action. Expose them, one person wrote. Drain the swamp, another added. He nodded, feeding off their excitement. Oh, we're just getting started, he promised. They should be scared. Back at the FBI, those words didn't go unnoticed. Agents replayed the clip, analyzing every sentence, every pause. Some dismissed it as performative, just a show for his followers. But others weren't so sure. He believes this, one agent muttered. He actually thinks we're the enemy. And then late that night, another twist. A private email thread among high-ranking officials was leaked to the press. In it, one senior FBI figure had written a single, ominous sentence. Asterisk, asterisk, we have to assume he already has a list. Asterisk, asterisk. But a list of what? Targets, enemies, plans? Nobody knew for sure. But one thing was becoming clear. This was only the beginning. Here's the next part of your story. By morning, the entire country was talking about the leaked email. News outlets speculated about the meaning behind the words. Asterisk, we have to assume he already has a list, asterisk, a list of what? Some believed it meant political enemies. Officials within the FBI who had worked on past investigations involving Trump or his allies. Others worried it could be something even bigger, a roadmap for reshaping the agency from the inside. Inside FBI headquarters, agents worked under a cloud of uncertainty. Some were already preparing for the worst. Rumors spread that certain senior officials were considering resigning before they were forced out. Others believed staying was the only option, that leaving would mean handing over control without a fight. But the fear was real. Nobody knew who was safe anymore. One agent, a veteran with over 20 years at the Bureau, checked his email 3 times that morning, half expecting to see a transfer notice, or worse, an order for immediate termination. Instead, he found something even more unsettling. A message from an unknown sender, just 3 words long. Asterisk, asterisk, watch your back. Asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, the new deputy director made his first official appearance at FBI headquarters. Dressed sharply, walking with confidence, he entered the building as if he had always belonged there. Some agents watched in silence, others turned away. He noticed, and he smiled. Reporters swarmed outside, hoping for a statement, but he kept walking. He had something else planned. That afternoon, a memo was sent to every division in the Bureau. In it, he outlined a top-down review of FBI operations, promising transparency and accountability. But one line stood out, sending chills through those who read it. Asterisk, asterisk, all personnel will be subject to revaluation. Asterisk, asterisk. That night, in a small apartment just outside of D.C., a former intelligence analyst sat at her desk, scrolling through old case files. She had left the Bureau 2 years ago, but she still had contacts inside. When she saw the memo, she immediately sent a message to an old colleague. Asterisk, he's not reviewing the Bureau. He's hunting people, asterisk. Elsewhere in Washington, politicians were scrambling. Some called for congressional hearings, while others celebrated the move as long overdue reform. But behind closed doors, the conversation was different. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle whispered about the real stakes. If the FBI was reshaped under partisan leadership, what would that mean for future investigations? Would political enemies suddenly find themselves under scrutiny? And then, late in the evening, another leak. A classified document surfaced, one that had never been meant for public eyes. It detailed a list of high-profile cases, ongoing and past, many involving political figures. At the bottom, a note had been scribbled in the margins. Asterisk asterisk prioritize review of these individuals. Asterisk asterisk. The handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to the new deputy director. The message was clear. The purge had begun. The FBI building felt different now. A quiet paranoia had settled over the halls, the kind that made even the most seasoned agents glance over their shoulders. Conversations were whispered, emails were drafted and deleted, and nobody was sure who they could trust anymore. It wasn't just about losing jobs, it was about what came next. In the days following the leaked document, everything seemed to move faster. A handful of senior officials were abruptly reassigned to lower-level positions. Others found their security clearances under review. Some received vague but unsettling notices that their work was being reevaluated for national security reasons. On the surface, it looked like routine administrative reshuffling. But those inside the Bureau knew better. This was a purge, slow and methodical. One night, an agent in the cyber division was working late when his computer screen flickered. A new system update, the message said. But when he clicked, something wasn't right. His access was blocked. Files he had worked on for years, gone. He tried to log back in, but his credentials had been revoked. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Asterisk asterisk, don't come back tomorrow. Asterisk asterisk. Meanwhile, at the Justice Department, quiet meetings were taking place behind closed doors. Legal experts debated whether the new deputy director had overstepped his authority. But the bigger question was whether anyone had the power to stop him. He hadn't broken any rules, at least, not on paper. Every move he made was carefully calculated, wrapped in just enough bureaucratic language to make it seem legitimate. The White House remained silent. Reporters pressed for a statement, but there was none. The message was clear. This wasn't just about the FBI. This was bigger. Then something unexpected happened. Late one night, an encrypted message was sent to several journalists and former intelligence officials. It contained a list of names, dozens of them. Current and former FBI employees. Some were still at the Bureau. Others had left years ago. But what they all had in common was one thing. They had been involved in politically sensitive cases. Cases that the new deputy director had spoken about on his podcast, long before he ever set foot inside FBI headquarters. Somewhere in Washington, a former senior official sat alone in his office, staring at the names. He had always known the Bureau was resilient, that it had survived political pressure before. But this felt different. This felt like something it might not come back from. And then a final message appeared on his screen, sent from an anonymous account. Asterisk asterisk tomorrow, 9 a.m. Watch what happens. Asterisk asterisk. He exhaled, knowing whatever came next, there was no turning back. At exactly 9 a.m., FBI headquarters was anything but normal. Agents moved through the halls with a nervous energy, eyes darting between colleagues, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Some had spent the night combing through their emails, wondering if they were next. Others had already cleared out their desks, sensing the inevitable, but nobody knew what to expect. Then the alarms went off. A security breach. Within seconds, the entire building. Then another twist. A flash drive. Delivered anonymously to a major news outlet, it contained audio recordings, conversations that were never meant to be heard outside of the highest levels of government. On the recordings, a familiar voice could be heard speaking with top officials. "We need total control of the Bureau," the voice said. "If we don't act now, we may never get another chance." And then the most chilling part, another voice responding. Someone even higher up. "Then do it." Back at FBI headquarters, the tension reached a breaking point. Doors were being forced open. Agents were being escorted out. And the ones who remained had just one question on their minds. Had they just lost the FBI forever? Chaos unfolded inside FBI headquarters. Agents who refused to comply were forcibly removed, their badges deactivated in real time. Security personnel, some loyal, some confused, stood helpless as the takeover played out. The deputy director remained unseen, his orders carried out by the select few he had placed in key positions. But then something happened that he hadn't planned for. A power surge. Suddenly, the entire FBI network flickered. Screens went black, communications cut out, and the building was plunged into uncertainty. For nearly a minute, the system rebooted itself, and when it came back online, everything had changed. Key files, ones that had been locked away or deleted, were suddenly restored. Surveillance footage that had been wiped reappeared. And deep within the Bureau's encrypted archives, an internal report surfaced, one that had been buried for months. And just like that, the real fight had only just begun. In the hours that followed, FBI headquarters slowly returned to normal, at least on the surface. Agents who had been locked out were let back in, security systems were restored, and emergency meetings were held behind closed doors. But there was no celebrating. What had just happened wasn't a victory, it was a warning. The deputy director was taken into custody, but he refused to answer any questions. He sat in silence, his expression unreadable, as officials debated what charges could even be brought against him. There was no clear blueprint for this, an attempted internal coup carried out by one of the highest-ranking law enforcement officials in the country. The legal battle would stretch on for months, maybe years, but one thing was certain: he hadn't acted alone. Across Washington, the fallout began. Some members of Congress demanded an investigation, while others downplayed the event, calling it an overreaction. The White House issued a brief statement saying it was an internal personnel matter. But behind the scenes, power players were moving, trying to distance themselves from what had almost happened. And then there was the message. Proceed with Phase 2. The words hung over the FBI like a storm cloud. No one knew who had sent it or what it meant. But if this was only the beginning, what came next? Some believed it was a bluff, a final attempt to create fear where there was no real plan. But others weren't so sure. One senior official, watching from his office, stared at the monitors long after most had left for the night. He had been with the Bureau for decades, seen it weather scandals, political pressure, and outside threats. But this was different. This had come from within. As he reached for his coat, he glanced once more at the screen, at the words that refused to disappear. Phase 2. With a quiet sigh, he turned off the lights and walked out. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over.